Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to everyone in the UK and in the Netherlands that are participating in this webinar organized by Dutch Culture and the British Council. It's a very good collaboration between these two organizations. A webinar focusing on mobility between the UK and the Netherlands for artistic, cultural professionals, artists, makers, or representatives of cultural organizations, entitled How to Navigate Travel and Work Requirements, a practical checklist for Netherlands-based artists and cultural professionals. A very warm welcome again. My name is Marcel Veil, and as you can read below, I'm Head of International Cultural Policy and Coordination, a mouthful, at Dutch Culture. And for those who are not fully aware of Dutch Culture, we are the national platform for international cultural collaboration in the Netherlands. So our main objective is to inform the Dutch cultural sector on international cultural collaborations. We try to support makers in their international ambitions. And of course, we are really dependent also on our peers here in the Netherlands and abroad. And as already mentioned, this webinar is organized in close collaboration with the British Council, a very good colleague organization. The British Council of the Netherlands, that is a very important organization here in the Netherlands. We have very warm and good relationships with the British Council in the Netherlands already for years. But rather recently, we signed a new MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, to again activate this very good relationship. And this webinar is one of the first practical outcomes of this collaboration. The program, because we have a full program that will last an hour and a half roughly, is that I will give the floor to my colleague, Struan Campbell, the Head of Education at the British Council of the Netherlands, and then furthermore to my colleague, Judith van der Kooi. And Judith is very important for Dutch culture because she's in charge of the so-called Mobility Info Point, the MIP. And the Mobility Info Point provides very practical answers to artists that somehow get stuck in their international endeavor. It can vary from visa to transporting goods and people. So this is also really part of this webinar. Also present is Judith's colleague, the Mobility Info Point UK, Katie James. And of course, we will end with providing you the opportunity to ask questions. You can ask the questions in the chat on the comments next door, and we will try to answer those questions as good as possible. Enough said. I wish you all a very fruitful and relevant webinar. Hopefully at the end of this webinar, you are better equipped to work between the Netherlands and the UK. Thanks again for your presence, and hopefully we'll meet again for a future webinar or otherwise in a live event organized by us, Dutch Culture, or by the British Council here in the Netherlands or in the UK itself. And I'm quite pleased to hand over the microphone, the virtual microphone, to my colleague, Struan Campbell. Struan, the floor is yours.
So my name is Struan Campbell. I'm Head of Education for the British Council in the Netherlands. I lead our cultural engagement work across arts and education. The British Council is the UK's official cultural relations organisation, working in over 100 countries, based in the UK, and with offices here to support you in terms of cooperation across the North Sea. We're really thankful today to Judith and to Katie for talking and guiding us through how to travel, how to work between the UK and the Netherlands so that we can build on hundreds of years of artistic cooperation and exchange. It's really important that when we are thinking about cooperation in the UK and you're thinking about your work in the UK, that you consider all four nations and research that really carefully to make sure that the place that you want to do your work or your artistic output has the right alignment and values. And we'd really encourage you to spend time with us and with Dutch culture and our colleagues in the Dutch Embassy in London to think about what is the right fit for you. I'm going to hand back now to Judith, who's going to start the session off.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much, Struan, for this introduction, and also a big thank you for you for co-hosting this session with us. My name is Judith van der Kooi. I work for Dutch Culture and more specifically for the Mobility Info Point, which is an information and advisory service for artists and culture professionals and organizations that work across borders. And we especially handle and assist in issues with an administrative, that is administrative or practical, such as finding mobility funding for international projects, or taxes and social security in an international context, or visa and work permits for international guests, all these practical stuff you need to deal with when working across borders. As an organization, we are a member of the network On the Move, which is an international network for artists, and that they support artists who wish to work internationally. And within this network, we have a working group for mobility info points. And there are 11 mobility info points right now across Europe and also in the United States, in Belgium, in France, in Germany, in Sweden, in Austria, and also in the United Kingdom, with whom we are working today. And all of us, we have certain specific knowledge of the national context we work in. And during this working group, we share knowledge, we share information, we share experiences and updates about national regulations and international regulations. And sometimes we also co-organize these kind of webinars. What inspired us to organize this session today is the growing number of questions of Dutch artists who would like to work in the UK. And these questions have become even more frequent since the introduction of the ETA. The ETA is the Electronic Travel Authorization, which is an extra travel requirement you have to think of when traveling and working in the UK. It's something that is not only for artists, but it's for every Dutch national. And somebody who knows a lot about this topic is my colleague Katie James of Arts Info Point UK. And Arts Info Point UK is the mobility info points in the United Kingdom. And we've co-organized this webinar, and Katie will walk you through all the key things you need to know when preparing to travel and to work in the UK. If you have any questions during the webinar, as Marcel already said, please put them in the chat. And during the presentation, we will have a moment to address your questions, but also after the presentation, there will be a Q&A. For the presentation, we will send a follow-up mail with the presentation, so no need to make notes or whatsoever. This will be sent to you if you have signed up. And if you haven't signed up, send us an email at infopoints@dutchculture.nl and we will send it to you anyway. Okay, I think it's time to go to the UK now. So a warm welcome to Katie James, and the floor is yours.
Hello all, good afternoon. Thank you, Judith, for the very warm welcome to this event. My name is Katie James. I am the contact point for Arts Info Point UK. And we're just really pleased to be here to be able to speak to you all about coming to the UK and welcoming you to the UK. My colleague Zélie Flack is also here on hand backstage and may appear at some point if we need a bit more help with the presentation. But you're going to be with me now for the next sort of 10-15 minutes going through this presentation. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'll talk a bit about who we are and how we're set up first. It's a partnership initiative of the Arts Councils of the UK. So that's Creative Scotland, Arts Council Northern Ireland, Arts Council England and Wales Arts International. WAI, Wales Arts International, that's the development arm of the Arts Council of Wales, and that's where I'm based. It's a sunny day here in Cardiff. That's where I'm based in Wales, and that's where Zélie's based as well. And we host the initiative, but it's very much a partnership initiative of those 4 cultural agencies of the UK. Can I go to the next slide, please? As Judith has covered a bit about the remit of the mobility information points, we develop free and reliable information for international artists and organisations and groups that want to visit the UK, whether it's Wales, Scotland, England or Northern Ireland. And of course, we provide resources for those and support to those UK organisations that will be hosting them. We develop resources via online information and through a range of events like this. And we also host our own regular coffee morning events as well. I have forgotten to put where you can sign up to our newsletter on this slideshow, I realised afterwards. But there's a link tree there, which has got a lot of key information about what we've developed, including our coffee morning and our newsletter. So you can, as Judith has said, we'll share these slides afterwards, so you'll be able to have all the relevant links to find out all the information. Can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So yes, we are part of the On the Move network of mobility information points, as Judith has said, and Dutch Culture is as well. So if you're traveling to any of these countries, it's a really useful way of finding out the information you need on those countries and in those contexts. This microsite, which this slide links to as well, has also got a lot more it's got a lot of relevant information about cultural mobility in general. And we all regularly collaborate on joint resources and events like we are today. So it's a really crucial network, I think, for artists and cultural mobility to be aware of. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of an agenda about today. We're going to go through, first of all, I'll go through about how to move yourself. So how movement of people. So some of the UK immigration information. We'll have a short break after that, just a very quick check-in to see if there's any questions or clarification needed at that point. And then we'll go into the second part, which is more about how to move your stuff and things and your goods and social security taxation. And then we'll close and we'll go back for some more questions. So yes, feel free to put those questions in the comments and we'll come back to them. Okay, so if we go to the next slide and we'll go straight into the visa regulations. The starting point, so now that the UK is no longer part of the EU, you do need to consider some things about when you're coming to the UK now for visiting as a tourist or for work. So this slide, this PowerPoint is designed as a checklist, and it's probably going to cover some things that you already know as artists and organisations that are already very mobile internationally. But it also contains links to the information that you can then refer to later and read later when you're planning your trip to the UK. So hopefully it's useful in that respect. And this slide is about your first port of call would be to check if you're a visa national or a non-visa national. That's how we distinguish, but there's a differentiation in the UK, and it would have an impact about how and what you will be able to apply for. All Dutch nationals with a Dutch passport will be a non-visa national. All EU nationals are non-visa nationals. In most instances, we're going to be talking, because this is for Dutch artists, we'll be talking about those that are non-visa nationals, but I'll refer to both of those categories as well all the way through. So that's one of the first things to be aware of. And then it's this criteria alongside whether or not you're being paid in the UK and the amount of time you're going to spend in the UK. That are the key factors about how you're going to make a decision on which visa to choose to come to the UK based on your activity. Next slide, please. We've developed a visa guide with legal professionals, and I think this is a good starting point, which links to the UK government information, but it is curated for artists and talks specifically to the cultural sector. And it also talks in each category about the supporting documents that each route we're going to discuss today requires. While I go through these things, as Judith has said, we'll share this afterwards. So I would definitely suggest that you look at our visa guide in conjunction with anything that we talk about today, because I think it's just a really helpful, it'll give you a fuller appreciation of what you're going to need depending on the route you're going to take to the UK. Okay, and the next slide, please. So one of the first things to, obviously, you will need a valid passport. The passport has got to be valid for your whole stay in the UK. There's a link there about information on passport validity. You should check. It is definitely worth checking the UK government and the visa guide for the documents that you need. And as Judith mentioned, the electronic travel authorization is now the rollout of that is now complete, so it applies to everybody. So all non-visa nationals that come to the UK now, so that's all Dutch nationals, EU nationals that are coming to the UK under an entry route that doesn't require you to apply for a visa, which we're going to go into shortly, you're going to need an ETA. It's a short application, but it can take up to 3 working days to process, so it is a good idea to leave plenty of time. It's valid for 2 years, or it might expire sooner if your passport expires sooner than 2 years. But if you don't have one of these, you know that it's likely you won't be able to board the plane. So it is something you're going to need as a tourist or as some of the routes that we're going to go through now. So this is a new scheme, and it's very similar to the schemes that are set up already in the States, ESTA, and I think there's one in Australia. There's a number of countries around the world that already have this in place, and so it's going to be similar to ETIAS that will come in the EU as well soon. So it's a really similar scheme, but it is something that's it's a new thing for EU nationals or for anybody to have to do this for the UK. So it's something for you all to be aware of. And then there's a line here about the documentation. All the entry routes that we're going to look at now will require some sort of documentation to prove the details of your visit to the UK. In most instances, EU nationals can enter the UK via the e-gates, but there's always going to be a chance that you may find yourself in front of a border official at the UK border who may ask you for documentations and proof to support your stay in the UK. So we'll go into that a little bit in some of the routes into the UK. So we'll look at that now, actually, on the next slide. Thank you. So this is... Oh, yeah, sorry, I've got 2 slides up in front of me. Thank you. So this is the entry route to the UK as a tourist. It's called the Standard Visitor Visa. You can stay in the UK for up to 6 months if you meet the eligibility criteria. There's links in the slide there that will go into the eligibility criteria. So this is called a visa, but for non-visa nationals, you won't need to apply. There is no application for this. You can just walk in through the e-gates. The slide notes that there's some business related activity that you can do and as a standard visitor in the UK. But it's important to note that you cannot be paid from a UK source for any activity that you do. But there is a list there of some of the things that you can do, personal appearances, promo activity. This route is often used by showcasing artists in the UK. So artists that are coming over for showcase festivals. Because of the model of showcase festivals, they're often unpaid. And so this then is a valid route for bands that are coming over to perform at showcase festivals. As I said, you can enter the UK via the e-gate, but if you do end up speaking to a border official, you might need to explain your travel plans and how you can support yourself financially for the time you are in the UK. And the links here will explain all of this, including the eligibility criteria, as well as coming. So when you do come in as a tourist, you're going to need the ETA, electronic travel authorization, which is linked to your passport. So it's not, you won't have a document as an ETA. It will just all automatically be linked to your passport when you go through the e-gates. Next slide, please. So as we've just gone through the sort of how it would be to come in as a visitor, as I've explained, as a tourist, you cannot be paid by a UK source. So these 2 routes called permit-free festivals and permitted paid engagements are exemptions under standard visitor rules, which means you can be paid in the UK for the work that you carry out. That has quite strict criteria around it. So you'd have to meet, you do need to meet the standard visitor rules initially. And then additionally, if you are eligible to work under these under the conditions of these 2 routes, these are good exemptions that artists can consider if they're coming to the UK for short-term temporary work. So the first one here, permit-free festivals, is a list of pre-authorized festivals. That's what that link will take you to. And artists can come and perform at any of the festivals on that list within the 6-month window that the standard visitor gives you. Again, like I said, you can use the e-gate, but what you need to have to hand as documentation is a welcome letter from the UK organisation or festival that's confirming your activity, including any contract. And you should be able to satisfy all the requirements as well, like I said, on the standard visitors, and prove that you have sufficient funds to support yourself in your time in the UK. So that's one option. It's permit-free festivals. You can go to those festivals on that list, but you know, the festival needs to have invited you, and you need to be able to prove that you've been invited and they want you there at the festival. And that is something that you might be asked for at the border. The second one there is the permitted paid engagement. So this is this limits you to working within the first 30 days, but it is reserved for established professionals. You need a letter of invitation from a UK partner, a creative organisation, an agent or agency, or a broadcaster, proof you can support yourself, and proof that you are the established professional and that the engagement that you've been invited to by the UK organisation relates to your full-time profession as an artist. So this is very much reserved for established professionals. And if you do find yourself in front of a border official, as I said, for this one as well, you can come in as through the e-gate. But if you do find yourself in front of a border official, they may ask you for proof that you, number one, the invitation letter from the UK organisation, but also demonstrating that you are an established professional, either through like a CV, like a creative CV, or looking at performances that you've had or have coming up, awards you've received, just something that really demonstrates that you are the full-time professional and that in the field that you've been invited to the engagement for. And you do have to complete that paid work within the first 30 days of your of arrival into the UK. These two, as I said, they're both exemptions under the visitor rules. So you can actually combine them. You can do some permit-free festivals and some permitted paid engagement, but you do have that very strict criteria of having to do all of your paid work under PPE in the first 30 days. And for both of these, you will also need an ETA in hand as well when you come into the UK. Okay, next slide, please. Sorry, this is a lot of information. And of course, we can come to any questions or any clarification that maybe you feel I need to go over again. These are some of the sponsorship options, which means as a sponsorship, under sponsorship, you need to have a certificate of sponsorship from a Home Office registered sponsor. The creative worker concession, which is the one on the left there, is only available for non-visa nationals. Again, that's Dutch nationals and all EU nationals. Under this route, you can be sponsored by a UK partner who would provide you with a certificate of sponsorship. It would then allow you, as under the concession route, to be in the UK for up to 3 months to work under the specifics of the certificate you've been issued by the UK partner. Under this route, you don't need to apply for a visa for this either. It's one that, but when you arrive at the UK border, you will need to go to a border official. You can't go through the e-gates with this one. It's not part of the, it's completely separate to the visitor rules. And you would need to go and speak to a border official and show them your certificate of sponsorship. And then I think if you go to that link there as well, there's other, and look at the other criteria you would need in case a border official asks you. That is something that you would need to have to hand, and then they will let you through. You do need an ETA for this route as well, because you haven't had to make a visa application. But I've also included the longer term sponsorship option here, because, as I said, the concession route is only open to non-visa nationals. So if you're traveling in a group, or if you're a visa national and you're not on the, which I think at the very beginning there, there was a link to the visa national list. If you're on one of the visa nationals, or you're traveling in a group and some of you are visa nationals and some of you aren't, and you're going to go down the sponsorship route, the visa nationals will have to apply for a visa, and it will be through this creative worker visa here, which is a longer term route. And non-visa nationals can apply for it as well. If you need to be in the UK for longer than 3 months, it's an option. And you can be in the UK for up to 12 months. It's a bit more complicated. Both non-visa nationals and visa nationals would have to apply. Again, you would need a Home Office sponsored body in the UK to sponsor you, a Home Office registered organisation to sponsor you, but it is an option. And then because you would be applying for the longer term visa, you don't need an ETA in hand for that one, because you will have already made an application to the Home Office for your visa. But yeah, these are the sponsorship routes that are available for artists to come and visit in the UK. So I think, so the next slide, we're going to coming up to just a quick check-in, as I've just rattled through quite a lot of information about immigration. So I don't know if anybody, Judith, has got any questions, or if you want me to explain anything in more detail.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Katie, for the presentation so far. We have one question. I will show it on stage. It's a question by Luca Arfini, and she has a question regarding the PPE, the permitted paid engagement, and the festival permitted free festivals, I suppose. And she asks, I don't really understand what the difference is between being a tourist and then on top of visiting the UK, you would also attend a festival. Why should you need additional proof? I mean, if you are visiting the UK as a tourist, does it even matter if you also attend a festival?
It's not about attending a festival. It's if you're going to work, if you're going to be paid and work at a festival, then that is not allowed as a standard visitor. So that is why these exemptions have been created. It's to allow people to be paid to be at a festival. And whilst it's quite light touch in terms of entry to the UK, it may be that you don't see anybody coming through, say, going to Edinburgh Fringe Festival, for example, is on the permit-free festival list. So if you were a performer and going to the Edinburgh Fringe, given the number of artists that will go through the Edinburgh airport, it's unlikely that anybody will question you. You'll go through an e-gate. But if your passport doesn't, if there's a glitch on your passport, or for whatever reason the gates don't work, or for any other reason that you find yourself in front of a border official, they will expect you to have proof that, you know, of why you've been asked to come to the UK and work. And it's just an exemption under the standard visitor. So it's not about attending a festival. It's about performing at a festival and being paid in the UK. I don't know if that helps.
Yes. Now you're talking about festivals and the list of festivals where you don't need extra paperwork and you are permitted to work. You just mentioned Edinburgh Festival.
Yes.
Could you give some examples of other festivals that are on the list?
Because let me just, and also just to, as an additional, yes, I'm saying this while I'm bringing it up in front of me. Yes, it's basically, the other thing to note about this route is that all the festivals that are on this list have had to apply to be on this list. So they've had to go through scrutiny with the Home Office already to be on this list, and to be of a certain criteria with a certain number of international visitors. And there's strict criteria and eligibility about how you can be on this list. But yeah, there's Belfast International Arts Festival, Brighton Festival, Camp Festival, Celtic Connections is on there in Scotland, Edinburgh Fringe, a lot of the festivals from Edinburgh, all of those are on there. Glastonbury is on there. So there's some commercial festivals on there, as well as some very more sort of arts-led festivals. Hay Festival, Hay Literature Festival is on there.
So all the disciplines, and there's a link in the presentation, right, to the list.
Yeah. And it's about, I should have counted them. There's probably about, I mean, it's fairly restrictive. You're not going to find like a small festival. So maybe if you're going to go and perform at a small arts festival in the UK, you may need to look at a PPE, the permitted paid engagement route instead. But yeah, there is a list there of festivals, and they've all had to apply. It's an annual application process to get onto this list, that goes through the Home Office. And that's so really the scrutiny is already made on that side. And obviously when you come through the e-gates, they try to make it simple for EU nationals in terms of at the border, but actually, you know, you could find yourself in front of a border official having to explain, and then you really do need all the paperwork on you to stack up behind your visit to the UK.
Okay, so very important to know that even when you are going to perform on one of these festivals, when you are at the border, you can pass through the e-gates, but it's also possible that there's a border official asking you for an invitation and the things you mentioned in your presentation. So you need to be prepared in that sense.
Yeah, and anybody on any festival on this list will know that, and they will have a letter of invitation for you. And they, you know, may even have, I know Edinburgh Fringe is very good at it. They'll brief any artists that are coming to the Fringe to have this in place and to have that in place and to make sure that you have got all your documentation, because they've been scrutinized for this list. They're very good at preparing artists that are performing at their festival to be ready for it, and to be good at the border as well, to be ready at the border.
We have another question also from Luca Arfini. I will show it now.
Okay.
The Home Office sponsor would need to pay to sponsor you. So this is the
Home Office registered sponsor. Yes, there is a fee for issuing certificates of sponsorship. Anybody that's registered as an official Home Office sponsor, it's different for everybody. I mean, so it's not, but they will have like a number of people that they're allowed to sponsor per year, for example, potentially, and they will have to pay a fee depending on the kind of sponsorship for a certificate of sponsorship. I don't have the prices in front of me. I'm sorry. The one I know for the concession sponsorship route, it's relatively low. I think it's under £50, but I would need to. They've gone up recently, so that's why I don't have it to hand. But in terms of the artist, in terms of a Dutch artist applying, I mean, they wouldn't be a cost to them because there's no application process, and it would be a fee that the sponsor would pay to issue the certificate.
We have another question by Veerle. She's asking, is there a difference if you aren't paid directly by the festival, but by the company you work for? So this is a company based in the Netherlands.
Yeah, so I think, so yeah, as I said, the visitor rules don't allow you to be paid specifically from a UK source. If you are being paid, by your company to go to the UK, then potentially you can come in as a visitor, and because you're not being paid by a UK source. There's nobody in the UK paying you to be in the UK to come and perform. So then I think you need to look through the eligibility of I don't want to give a catch-all answer of yes, that's fine. I think you need to double check on your activity, but there are, there are instances where if you are being paid, if you're on a salary from your organization, and then that part of your work is to come to the UK and do, there may be, I think there could be some instances where, it would be fine for you to come through as a visitor visa. But I think it would really depend on the circumstances. And I needed to caveat, actually, from the very get-go, I really should have caveated this. I'm not a legal advisor. I'm not professionally qualified to provide legal advice. So this is for your information, really. So, there will be instances where maybe you need to get some legal advice. But I'm happy for anybody to follow up via email if they've got some circumstances that they just want to check their understanding on.
We have another question from Elgin Flanagan. Will accommodation and travel charges be covered?
I think that would depend on your contract. If you mean like would somebody in the UK cover for your accommodation and travel? I mean, there are some instances, even as a visitor visa, where they will allow certain costs to be covered, which might, where there is an established relationship and they're paying for your accommodation. They're not paying for you to be at the event that you're organizing in the UK, but actually they are going to cover your travel and accommodation. Then that is something that potentially, again, could be covered by a visitor visa. I think it's something you'd need to look at the specifics, really. and I think if that's what you're asking, but otherwise, it's up to UK organisations whether they will cover your accommodation and travel. That would depend on contracts and all sorts of different examples, I suppose.
We have a question from Marielle Mate. So if I understand correctly, if I participate actively to a festival, but I do not get paid, I just need a tourist ETA. Well, that's which website should I use to request an ETA?
This is something we've come across recently, isn't it, Judith?
Yes.
So, in terms of if you're being paid to perform at a festival, but we've already covered that. And you're on the list, that's fine. If you're not being paid, but you are performing at a festival, then if you come under the rules of the tourist visa, which there are links to in the webinar, in the PowerPoint, there are some performances are allowed, unpaid performances. Just check. I think you need to be comfortable that what you are coming to the UK for sits within the eligibility of the tourist visa. And it does explain, it's not exhaustive. It doesn't explain you can do this, this, and this, but it gives you examples of what you can do as a tourist in the UK. So you need to check that first. And if you do think, yes, I can come to the UK on the tourist visa and complete my activity in the UK because I'm not being paid, then you can come through as a tourist. And then if you are coming through as a tourist, you additionally need the electronic travel authorization. You would go to, there's a link in the PowerPoint that we'll share afterwards, only go to the UK government for it. It's the UK government that issues it. There's an ETA team. And I know there are third parties out there that are also, purporting to be useful, and maybe can get you something quicker. Or maybe Judith had a query recently about a business ETA which would allow them to do more. That doesn't exist. There's one ETA. It's for everybody. It's one cost, and it comes from the UK government. You can either do it online or via an app. So, and one thing I've just remembered I didn't cover actually as well, as I said, give yourself time for the ETA because it can take up to 3 or 5 days to process. And I think the thing to consider with an ETA is if you're turned down, there's no appeals process. So if you wouldn't turn down for your electronic travel authorization, you can't appeal. And if you don't receive your ETA, then even though you're a non-visa national, as a Dutch national, you would actually have to apply for a visa. Because to be honest, even all the ones I've discussed as the permitted paid, the visitor visa, which then you can also do permit-free festivals and permitted paid engagement underneath that. As a non-visa national, you don't have to apply for that. You can, if required, you may be asked to present things at the border, but you can just walk through. You can actually apply if you wanted to, if you wanted certainty that you would absolutely get through, because some people find the uncertainty of a permitted paid engagement too much. It's crucial that they have to be in the UK for a certain date, or because maybe they've had immigration problems before and they feel that actually to be safer, I'd rather have a document on me that's already approved that lets me into the UK. Some people apply for a PP for that reason. But also, it would be similar for applying for an ETA. Potentially, if you have some criminal, criminal past, or some, element, something in your past that is making you question whether they would, or even just if you've been turned down for visas previously, not even just from the UK, just generally, and you feel like actually, I'm not sure if I'm going to get my ETA. I would definitely leave plenty of time to be able to process that, because it could take up to a week. And then if you don't have it, you can't come into the UK. But equally, if you don't get it, you will have to apply for a visa, which will add time on. That could add 3 weeks onto your planning.
So very important to prepare on time and not to wait on the last moment.
Yes.
Okay, let me check if there's another question. We have another question from Luca, but not any artistic organization can act as a home office sponsor, right? Let's say I want to cooperate with a small photography organization for a month So as an EU citizen, I could apply to the temporary sponsor, but then who should act as a home sponsor? The small organization or someone else on their behalf?
Yeah, it's true. Not everybody is. There is actually a list of sponsors. It's on the Home Office website. If you Google that, you can find a list of registered Home Office sponsors. Yes, it would have to be a registered Home Office sponsor. That would, in terms of sponsorship, so we're looking at the Creative Worker Visa concession or the Creative Worker Visa, the longer term one. It has to be a registered sponsor. It's probably unusual. You may find that smaller organisations in the UK aren't registered sponsors, and so it may be, but also it's not uncommon, in particular maybe in the music industry, for an agent to sponsor a band, and even to you could find an agent that will sponsor you. So, but I think in your instance, and I'm not sure that would help. But if you can't find a sponsor, then maybe you would need to look at permitted paid engagement, or ask your UK organisation if there is another route to sponsor. If there is somebody else that can sponsor you. But it would all have to make sense. This side, any Home Office registered sponsor has got they've got things they need to consider. They're listed with the Home Office. They've got things they need to do with the Home Office, and they're sort of can be seen as responsible for the person that they're sponsoring. So they've got some things that I'm trying to think of the right word, but they can't just sponsor anybody. So that they've got some stuff they need to deal with on the UK and with the Home Office as well. So then who would act as a home sponsor? Yeah, you would need to discuss that with the UK organisation that you'd be working with, about whether they are aware of anybody that could sponsor you if they're unable to, like properly and correctly.
This was the final question.
Okay.
I was just wondering myself, the ETA, have you seen any problems with application? Have you heard of any stories of other artists around ETA, since it has just been introduced since a few months?
Yeah, no, the example that you sent me, where they had been told they had all of thought they had all applied for a business ETA, which allowed them to do more, which doesn't exist. So there's clearly other organizations out there working on this, taking advantage of this new scheme and trying to kind of maybe get more money out of people that are applying. But I have also heard of people trying to apply very last minute, and then their event is maybe in 3 days' time and they still haven't got their ETA. And so that really leaves them in a bit of a bind. So that's why it's a very good idea to apply. If you're a frequent visitor to the UK, you could apply, whenever, and just think, I've got, it's £16 and it lasts 2 years. So it's one of the, it's probably, especially when it's really developed, it'll be one of those things that it's probably just something that if you do have a lot of work in the UK, or even just occasional work in the UK, that you just have, so that it's just there ready for when you can do a quick visit. The other thing I've heard of more anecdotally is people being turned away from their flights because they weren't aware of it. But I think now that it's I think there's been a lot of awareness raising from the ETA team in UK government, and they've really got the message out there. So I haven't actually heard that much about it. I've heard it's very easy from one person as well. It was very simple. It was done very quickly. I think in a lot of instances, you probably find out very quickly within a couple of hours. In some instances, you could just apply and there it is in your email, or however it works, in a couple of hours time. So, but it's just something to
apply yourself. That's a good tip, right? Don't use any other agents or whatsoever, because it's quite easy and it's not expensive, and just use the right government link to apply for. Okay.
Just make sure it's a government link. Yeah. I mean, it's quite easy to be duped into. They all look very official, or they tell you that we'll make it easier for you, whereas in fact it's a very simple application. It shouldn't take long.
Okay. I'll let you continue with the presentation.
Oh, okay. Where is it? Let me find it. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so we've covered movement of people, and so now we're going to move on to obviously the rest. The rest is sometimes you've got things that you need to bring, or there's other things that you need to consider. So we're just going to very quickly go into some initially moving goods. So now that the UK is no longer part of the EU, we're no longer part of the single market. So if you are bringing in goods to use or sell as part of your business, you need to declare it. So this slide is now looking at what you need to do when you're bringing in goods temporarily to support your work. So technical equipment, stage production, things like that. So this is, as I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of, the ATA CARNE. It's a global initiative passport for goods. You pay for it. The link is there. It's at KVK, which is the Netherlands Chamber of Commerce, and it simplifies the border process for goods that you're going to temporarily bring into the UK or any other country that you're going to use the CARNE in. The same list of goods has to enter the UK. The list that you bring into the UK is the same list that must leave the UK, and it is checked at the border. So it is very much kind of set and technical equipment, really. It's usually kind of more larger scale things, or even arts exhibitions, things like that. So when you're trying to bring in a lot of stuff and it's all going to leave with you, this could be a good option for you. It usually lasts a year, so you might want to think ahead as well and think about any other activity you've got coming up that you might want to include in the CARNE, because the list that you put on there you don't have to take everything on the list into the UK. You can add things on there that you're not necessarily going to bring to the UK, but you might be taking to America in 3 months' time. So you can add to your list and make sure everything's on it, so that you don't have to apply for another one if you know you're going somewhere else within the year. Yeah, you can use the CARNE to re-enter the Netherlands, but if you're going to carry on somewhere else after the UK on some sort of on an international tour of description, then you want to check that the next stop that you're going to, that the CARNE is valid as well. If you don't want to use the CARNE, if you're unable to, then there is an option here to bring in your goods temporarily. You can temporarily import them and then temporarily export them. I think the reason ATA exists is because that can be a complex process, but you can of course find an agent or a freight company to help you with that as well. But the reason that CARNE exists, I think, is to really streamline this. The costs are on the KVK website, and there is a list of tariffs there. So I think so that's a good place to start. And I think they're usually all very helpful, if you've got any questions with certainly the London Chamber of Commerce is, and I'm sure it's the same in the Netherlands. So next slide, please. So that's temporarily moving your goods. This is also temporarily moving your goods, but it's an exemption. So there is actually some legislation in place in the UK and in the EU that means if you've got a portable musical instrument, your own portable personal musical instrument, you can carry and you can accompany that into the UK, and you don't need to declare it. You can walk straight through the nothing to declare line, and that's fine. And I know there's reciprocal legislation in the EU, which means if you're going back to the Netherlands, you can take it back to the Netherlands with you as well. But the description is quite key on this. It's portable musical instrument. So really it's like your guitar or, your own personal musical instrument, rather than sometimes we get questions about, is an amp my own portable, the word portable, I think you just need to think, is it something that you can just carry around on you and it's your own? I think the one thing that I've heard of anecdotally from artists that have been stopped is they've been asked to prove that it is their own personal guitar, which can be, or musical instrument, which can be difficult, but that is one thing I've heard of. And then the other thing on here is about CITES, which you again might be familiar with, and there's a quiz on here which is a really great quick quiz that it's you can go through, and it will tell you very quickly whether or not you do need a CITES certificate. And that was developed by Pearl as well as the Federation of International Musicians. And Pearl has also got some comprehensive guidance on this. So if you feel like your musical instrument contains endangered species of wood or ivory, ebony, you can do this quiz and find out quite quickly whether or not you need a certificate. Next slide, please. So this slide is talks to the things that you're going to bring in to sell or use as part of your business. So it's a permanent import, like merchandise or works of art. So bringing goods in to use or sell as part of your business should be declared, and you may need to pay customs duty and VAT. It's important to recognise the difference here now between the UK, Great Britain and Northern Ireland for the purposes of moving goods. It's quite a nuanced topic, and it's quite hard to cover in one slide. It really could take up a whole session. And actually some of the processes have actually recently changed. It's been a post-Brexit sort of process about how to implement the movement of goods into Ireland, into Northern Ireland and Ireland, as part of the post-Brexit changes. So for the purposes of this session, I just wanted to highlight that it is important to note the geographical distinctions for the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and how it relates to moving those goods into Northern Ireland. And so then thinking about any touring paths that you might be planning as part of your visit. So the UK is Wales, Scotland, England, and Northern Ireland. Great Britain is Wales, Scotland, and England. So when you look through these links, that you will see the distinctions in there. It will talk about, are you bringing your goods into Great Britain? So you just need to consider those, your touring paths. And there's links, those 3 links there will help you with any of the touring paths that you've got, but it's just knowing that you need to keep an eye out for those distinctions. Northern Ireland, for the purposes of moving goods, is still aligned with the EU single market for goods. So moving goods from the EU, which Ireland, Ireland is, obviously Northern Ireland is on the top, and then you've got Ireland. Ireland is part of the EU still. And if you're moving goods from the EU to Northern Ireland, it's treated as an EU internal movement with no customs duties. You will need a commercial invoice and a packing list or a delivery note. If you're importing cultural goods into Northern Ireland from outside the EU, there will be some new regulations from the 28th of June. So there's still a moving picture in terms of moving goods into Northern Ireland, but there's definitely some trader support service there is the body in Northern Ireland that's set up to support anybody who's got any queries about moving things into Northern Ireland, either from Great Britain. So I would suggest that you take a look through these links. I'm happy to take any questions, probably by email, if you've got any, if you are going to be visiting Northern Ireland, or you're sort of, some of this is making you think, oh, hang on, I need to understand this a bit better. It's probably something that would be better to take in an email, and we could look at those sort of specific scenarios. But I just wanted to flag really those geographical distinctions so that when you start looking up for the information for yourself, you're aware of where there could be a bit of nuance in, you know, if you've got a tour of, if you are touring the UK and you are going to be taking goods into Northern Ireland from, you know, you're going to do London, Edinburgh and Belfast, then you may need to consider what you're going to do in terms of moving goods. And what I've also put in here is actually considering getting your products, you know, made in the UK potentially, to avoid any, you know, to minimize some of this as well. You know, that is something that maybe is happening a bit more post-Brexit. And certainly we've talked about set stages and, you know, things that you need to accompany for performances. And, you know, I think things have changed in recent years in terms of how, you know, with lighting and things like that. And also work with your UK partner who may be able to lend you equipment or lend you anything that you need for your performances. So there's other ways of thinking about it. But if you do think, no, I need to bring my goods in, then use those links. And in fact, if you're going to be bringing your goods into the, like it says, you are going to, there's a way that you can declare your goods before you get to the border, and you can, and also it's a way of deciphering how much you're going to be liable to pay in terms of customs duty and tax. So, and it's quite an easy quiz. It's in the import goods into the UK step by step. So I would suggest that you go through there. There's quite a lot of information, but that's a good place to go. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a very brief slide about actually, there's some, I'm sure you have them in the Netherlands as well, there's clean air low emission zones that exist in some cities. There's been instances where you can drive through these zones and you should be paying a fee to do that. Quite often depends on the kind of vehicle you're driving. Some vehicles are exempt. My car's exempt. But I think vans often fall foul of this. They quite often get caught out. It's not unusual to get home and a couple of months later you get fined. But also, if you do find yourself driving through one of these zones, you can actually pay a few days usually after the fine as well. After you've done it, you notice signs in a city where you're driving and you're like, hang on, I should have done that. You can still do it. You don't have to. So anyway, but it's just something to be aware of. Next slide, please. This is about your social security. Make sure that you get your A1 certificate to prove you're paying social security in the Netherlands while you're working in the UK temporarily. Again, this is something I've heard anecdotally, especially in the UK, that it can take a while to get your A1 certificate. So I would suggest that this is something that you do in good time. The EHIC card does mean you can access medical emergency treatment in the UK, but it doesn't replace insurance, which you would need for any other eventualities. So it doesn't replace insurance. And then Pearl has got some great guidance on social security as well, and the cultural mobility of artists, cross-border mobility. Next slide, please. Taxation. So if withholding tax can't be avoided, so this is just some links here to double taxation. In the UK, we've got a scheme that is the Foreign Entertainers Unit, looks after taxation, and you will find that if you are being paid more than 12,570, which is the personal allowance pounds in the personal allowance in the UK, that your UK host may withhold tax from your payment. It could, so it's important to work with your UK partner on that. It can be complex. There's a video here. The link goes to a video that we did with the Foreign Entertainers Unit explaining about double taxation and just explaining how foreign entertainers tax rules work. And there are links there through the UK government website, which you can then think about your own circumstances. And if you've got any questions about that, you're welcome to follow up on them again by email. Taxation can be complex, but I think this webinar would probably answer most questions that anybody would have about that. Okay, and Pearl's got some great guidance on it again as well. Next slide, please. Since Brexit, business-to-business invoicing is now covered by UK VAT rules, so that's just something to be aware of. And again, Pearl has got some really good guidance on the principles of this, but it's just a slide here just to highlight this, that this is a change again post-Brexit. And next slide, please. Yes, so we've come to the end of the slides, but some final thoughts here. Definitely plan ahead. I think it's something that's read through quite, it's come through quite a lot of the presentation. Read a lot. There's some great resources out there. We're here if you've got any questions. And also I've put in a link here to the Farnham Maltings introductory guide to touring in the UK, because Farnham Maltings is a great venue based in south of England. And they've put together this guide which talks to some of the stuff that we've discussed here, specifically for the performing arts sector, but also it talks more broadly about how you can make the most of your time in the UK, touring in the UK, and make connections. And it's just a bit more of a broader introduction to the UK, and it's a great resource to get in, to read. And I put my email there as well. And then I think is that the end of the slides? Next slide.
Ik ga hem zelf even.
Oh, yes. And then also included some links here, which all of them relate to stuff that we've talked throughout, really. But yeah, it's just a fine glossary. And then the very last slide does say thanks and questions. That's the next slide. Thank you.
We do have a question from the audience. It's a question related to the temporary importing of cultural goods. And the question is, what about personal cameras?
I think, well, I'd need to double check that, but I think, I mean, it's your personal camera. It's not something that you're going to be using. I mean, you may well use it in your business. If you look on the link in the PowerPoint, it talks about bringing merchandise in bags. So there's two options that you can it gives you the restrictions around your personal. I think that could very well be deciphered as personal. It's your own personal camera. It's so that would be fine. It's probably if you've got a lot more equipment and it's very, like when it starts looking quite different when you're at the border in terms of rather than just having a personal camera. But there is in there, it talks about merchandise in baggage and also your personal goods. And there's thresholds on both. Like there's thresholds about what you can bring in personally, and there's thresholds about what you can bring in to use as part of your business. And you just need to read those and just make sure that you're within them, I think. But if you're sort of wondering, if you've got, if you're sort of thinking, I'm not sure, then, but, if after looking at that, feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, you could also have a look at the when you are thinking of, do I need an ATA CarNet, for instance? There's a lot of information also on the Kamer van Koophandel website.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about the CarNet, Katie. Do you think there are? It's quite costly, right? I mean, I believe it's 265 euros to apply, and then there's another premium that is added for the value of your goods, right?
Yeah.
So it can be super costly.
Yeah,
Are there
it can
any
be.
alternatives artists use? Like, what can you do if you have like a big PA or a lot of instruments you can't bring with you personally, but you have to transport them? What is an alternative?
Yeah, unfortunately it's really hard to find an alternative, but I agree it can be. So like you say, it's the initial fee, and then I think it's a percentage of the value of your goods, and then probably if you want it by tomorrow, there's an additional fee, and it really can add up. It could be like 500 euros by the time you look at it. But I suppose you need to look at the broader picture. Usually if you're going to use, I think, like I said, think about if you're going to bring in, if you've got big mass scale production, you're probably going to need a carnet, just because it really simplifies the process. And especially I think it makes sense if you've got tours over the year, that financially it just eases the burden a little bit. But I think working with your UK partner to lease or rent what you need in the UK, borrow it in the UK, get t-shirts made in the UK if you're selling t-shirts. There's things that are unavoidable, and in which case, if it's unavoidable, you just need to think about. But I do know people that have had sets made in the UK and then they just leave them there, and and also that's what I mean. Sets these days aren't, or it's not the traditional sets that you would think of. They're very different, and they're very lightweight, and and you can use lighting in a really creative way. And so I think a lot of people tend to go kind of more down that route and borrow what equipment you need. But but at the same time, if you've got a long-term commitment to an international tour, which is just makes sense to carry your own stuff, then really I think probably in the long run a carnet would pay off in terms of it's recognized at borders, and it's just quite easy to use. Well, okay. It's supposed to be.
Let me have a look if there are any other questions. Veerle, we are traveling with a stage decor to Hull. I don't know what that means. How specific does the carnet needs to be? Is that a festival or?
No, is it? Well, yeah, it's a city in England.
Okay, sorry. The last carnet I saw of our company, they counted all the loose screws, etc., and that's a lot of work. Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, I think some of this information, it will come down to who you meet at the border. I think, but I think it'd be as specific as you can. I think that's the answer, isn't it? And you do need to be quite specific. You may be lucky and, nobody will really pay much attention, and it's just, sign it and go through. But actually, as you said, they could count all of the loose screws, and it is a lot of work. And it actually add time as well. I tell you, maybe we can share it afterwards. I think it's in Touring Artists is the mobility information point in Germany. And they did an artist did a write-up, a blog about their experience with carnet and coming into the UK, getting a carnet and what they needed, and just some of those kind of like tips like this. It's like they probably would have spoken to the level of detail you need to use, and it's written in retrospectively, so it's after they've done it all, and if they'd known, they would have. It's things that after, and so what you would have done differently. So maybe we can find that link that might be useful for.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like with border officials, you could come across somebody who's just very difficult, or you could come across somebody that really understands what you're trying to do, and it's fine. So but also the Carnet Company should be able to the Netherlands Chamber of Commerce should be able to help you with this as well, I would have thought.
Okay, I believe there are no questions anymore, right? That means that we are heading to wrapping up this this webinar, I suppose. If still you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to get in touch with us. Let me show us our details. You can reach out to artsinfo.uk, of course, but also to Dutch Culture. We already mentioned our email address, so yeah, feel free. You can always email us, and if it's really a question that Kate should answer, I will transfer the email, of course, to her, or I will discuss it with her. That's where we are in a network for, right? So yeah, I really hope this was an insightful session for you. We will send an email afterwards with a survey, and we would be very thankful if you could fill out this survey so we can use it for to improve our future events. So and before we wrap up, I would like to take a moment to thank a few people. First of all, a big thank you to you, Katie, for the insightful presentation and for answering all the questions so thoroughly. And also a thank you to Struan Campbell of the British Council, who co-hosted this webinar, and also for the excellent collaboration throughout. And also I'd like to thank my colleagues at Dutch Culture who helped me to make this webinar possible, especially Elina and Kim backstage for all the support with the production, and also Dietschle with all the communication efforts she did. Yeah, and lastly, of course, I would like to thank you for joining the webinar. Yeah, please reach out to us if you have still any questions that pop up after this.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you so much, and yeah, see you soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.